Hello? Hello? Hello, everybody on, and welcome to my ASMR channel. Um, been trying to get this off of the back burner for a while, but ADHD, isn't it the best? Um, so I'm going to be experimenting a lot with what I post on this channel. We'll see what I like, what I don't like, but this shall be a first. I am going to run through my favorite Magic the Gathering commander deck. If you don't know Magic the Gathering, feel free to let me know in the comments and make some sounds, show you all how the deck works, how I win with it. What could I expect here is tapping sounds, card shuffling, card ruffling. It might be a bit fast and aggressive. It might be. But I don't intend for that to be the main type of ASMR on my channel. And this is also like a temporary setup. I still have no idea how to do the setup thing to record. So we'll see how it goes. If you enjoy the content, please leave a like or let me know in the comments. Oh yeah, this deck definitely has a few proxies in it. So, this is my commander, Lathril, Blade of the Elves. She is a 2/3 elf noble for 4 mana. She has menace. Tool. Somebody playing Shabaranks in the back. Yeah, so this is Lathril, Blade of the Elves. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, I get to create that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. And then I can tap her and tap 10 untap elves, and each opponent would lose 10 life, and I would gain 10 life, which is a pretty big swing. 30 damage and 10 life gain. She has Menace, which makes it easy for targeting. Menace means the creature cannot be blocked except but for by 2 or more creatures. So now that you know the commander, let's run through the deck. Lathril is my second deck I ever made. Well, not made, but my second commander deck I ever had. The first one was Otrimi Ever Playful, which was a precon. This was also a precon. And I slowly but surely upgraded them from what they were. And Lathril as a commander is really strong. I think she's up there for one of the most popular Golgari commanders. Golgari is black and green. That's a color identity. So the precon that they gave her was crap. So it really needed an upgrade. As I said, you could expect card shuffling, card ruffling. I'm gonna tap on it a bit. I'm gonna just make some card sounds. And I hope the autofocus on my phone could keep up. So let's cut this in half, and we'll go half at a time because as big as my hands are, it's still a bit much handling all these cards. It is a 99 card deck, isn't it? So I'm gonna run through, explain the cards, probably sort them, we'll see. And the first card, the classic Lathril Elf. I swear this was not planned. So when I originally got the deck, the precon, there was one drop elf in the deck. It wasn't this one. It was not this one. And so if anybody knows Magic the Gathering Elves, you know that the mana curve is relatively low, with quite a few of these one-drop elves. So, Lathril Elf is a 1/1 for 1, and it taps for 1 green mana. So this builds into the elf synergy. It makes mana early game, and later on, it can be one of the 10 elves being tapped to activate Lathril's secondary ability. If you forgot, that secondary ability is a top 10 untapped elves. Yeah. So, first card, Lathril Elf. Accelerates all mana. Second card, Extinction Event. Extinction Event is a board wipe. For 4 mana, it's a sorcery speed. Choose odd or even. Exile each creature with converted mana cost of the chosen value, and 0 is even, which ties into my deck. My commander is a 4 CMC commander. It is 2 black-green, so it's even. And the tokens that she makes are considered 0 CMC, 0 mana value. So those are also even. So while I may miss, I may accidentally wipe some of my odd CMC cards, the majority of the elves in this deck survive that. So, board wipe, Extinction Event. A swamp. I have a lot of swamps and I have a lot of forests in this deck. Swamps, well, if you know Magic, you'd know what a swamp is, but in the game of Magic, to play cards, you need to tap mana, and you get mana from lands. This is a land, it's a basic land, swamp, so that means I can tap it for 1 black mana. So, my commander's color identity is 2 black-green, well, her CMC is 2 black-green, so I can use 2 of any mana color, 1 black and 1 green. So, if I have this Lathril Elf out and it is not summoning sick, I can tap it for 1 green. This land, as it enters the battlefield, I can tap it for 1 black. So lands come here. Mirkwood Bats. Mirkwood Bats is one of the honorary elves in this elf tribal deck. It is a 4 CMC, flying bat, flying creature bat, 2/3, and it says whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. My commander creates tokens, so there is synergy. And I also have quite a bit of options to sacrifice tokens in the deck. The deck is not aristocrat heavy, but there are some payoffs there to trigger this and also just, value. I'll put you here. Myriad Landscape. Myriad Landscape is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped, which seems like a bad thing. However, when it untaps, I can pay 2 mana, sacrifice it, and search for 2 basic lands, so I can get a swamp, or I can possibly get a forest. But if it is I don't want to do that, I can always tap it for 1 colorless mana. Copperhorn Scout. Whenever Copperhorn Scout attacks, it is a 1 Copperhorn Scout. It is a 1/1 for 1 green creature Elf Scout. Whenever it attacks, I get to untap each other creature I control. That plays in real well with my commander, because that way I can attack with her and my elf army, and Copperhorn Scout will make the entire elf army untap. So then if I have 10 elves, because my commander did damage and created elves, then I can have the 10 elves to tap. So I will put this here for tap and untap shenanigans. This is Marwyn the Nurturer. She is a 3 CMC elf, legendary creature. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under my control, I can put a counter, a +1/+1 counter on her. And I can tap her to add green mana equal to her power. She's a 1/1 off the bat, but thinking that I have an elf deck and my commander makes elves, she can get pretty big pretty quickly. Elvish Guidance. One of the most expensive cards in the game of Magic the Gathering, but also a very powerful card, is a card called Gaia's Cradle. Gaia's Cradle is a land that lets you tap it, and it adds green mana to the amount of creatures you own. This is budget Gaia's Cradle. This is good value Gaia's Cradle. It's 3 mana, an enchantment, and I get to enchant a land. It says whenever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds green to his or her mana pool for each elf in play. Surprise, it's an elf deck. Surprise, it's an elf deck. So I get to enchant a land for 3 mana and then possibly tap it and make way more mana. So I'll put this here with the rest of the mana acceleration cards. Next card, Taiva Jubilant Brawler, is a 3 CMC Planeswalker. Taiva's static ability is you may activate the abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. So this is really powerful. This means any of my elves that can tap either to add mana or to do anything other than attack, I can use their abilities one time as I play them. So for example, if I have 10 or more elves on my deck, on my field already, and I have Lathril and I play Lathril, I could then tap her ability to use her ability without having to wait for her to lose summoning sickness. His +1 is to untap one other target creature, again, tap and untap synergies and shenanigans. And his -2 is to mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from graveyard to the battlefield, which is not bad considering it's an elf deck. Quite a few of the creatures are very low to the ground when it comes to their mana value. However, I don't use that ability much. I have other ways to recur things from the graveyard. This is mostly here for the static ability and for the tap on tap ability. So I'll put this here with the shenanigans. Another land. This is a forest. So just like you could tap a swamp for 1 black, you can tap a forest for 1 green. Look at that. Staff of Domination. Staff of Domination is a 3 CMC artifact. This is one of my win cons. I have a few in there, but this one outright. Once my board is set up a particular way, meaning a elf that can tap for 5 or more mana, then I can win the game. So a good example, let's say that Marwyn ends up with 5 +1/+1 counters. That means she can tap for 6 mana. Staff of Domination has 5 abilities. You can pay 1 colorless to untap it. You can pay 2 to tap it and gain a life. You can pay 3 to tap it and untap target creature. Again, tap and untap shenanigans, so it plays into the deck. It's not just a right-out win con. 4, you can tap target creature. This can be used defensively, so 4 mana and tap it, or 5 mana and tap it to draw a card. So if it is, I have an elf, for example, Marwyn the Nurturer with 5+1/+1 counters on her. She can tap for 6. I can use 5 of that mana, tap the Staff of Domination, draw a card. And then I can use the final I mixed that up. I mixed that up. I can tap her for 5 and then use the 3 to untap target creature and then the 1 to untap Staff of Domination with 1 mana floating. So I will continuously be able to net an extra mana every time I tap and untap Marwyn. So let's say she taps for 6, I'll tap her for 6. Use the 6 mana, 3 of it to untap target creature. That's 3 mana, and the extra 1 to untap the Staff of Domination. And then I can continuously do that until I have infinite mana. I could then draw out as many cards from my deck as I want, untap as many creatures. The end game of this and a creature that can tap for a large amount of mana is I basically get to play 10 elves and continuously tap and untap them to win the game, burning out my opponents. So I will put Marwyn back here with the mana acceleration, and I will put Staff of Domination with my win cons. This is the win con pile. So we have ramp, burn, board wipes, but I think I'll put interaction here as well. Synergies, lands. Beastmaster Ascension. Beastmaster Ascension says whenever you attack with a creature, it is a 3 mana enchantment. It was whenever you attack with whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension. As long as Beastmaster Ascension has 7 or more quest counters, creatures I control get +5/+5. So if I, for example, play this and then attack my enemies with 7 or more creatures, they automatically get +5/+5. So then my tiny 1/1 elves become 6/6s, which is quite a big difference. That's a forest. Golgari Charm. Golgari Charm in this deck plays double duty. It can either be an interaction or protection. So Golgari Charm is a 2 CMC instant. You can choose one of the options. Either all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn, or destroy target enchantment, or regenerate each creature you control. Regenerate is a keyword in Magic the Gathering that says if this creature would die, instead tap it, remove all damage from it. Yeah, basically instead of dying, it taps and all damage is removed. Like that one time this for the turn. So it plays double duty in this deck depending on the circumstance. But I'll put it here with interaction. Another forest. Quirion Ranger is an elf ranger, another 1/1 for 1. It says I can return a forest I control to its owner's hand and untap target creature. I can activate this only once each turn. Once each turn is not such a bad limitation when multiple people have turns in a game of Commander. So this doubles as ramp. So for example, I can I can return a forest that I have already expended for mana to my hand, especially if it is I don't have a land drop, and then untap a creature. So again, let's say Marwyn is about 6 power. I tapped her. I used her to do something. Quirion Ranger says I can return a forest I control to untap a creature. Return the forest that I already use. Untap her. I have extra mana, and then I can replay a forest. Synergy. Another forest. Costly Plunder. Now this goes into some of those sacrifice effects that I mentioned. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards. It's an instant spell for 2 mana. So I can sacrifice a creature or an artifact, draw 2 cards. Coincidentally, my commander creates creature tokens, so I will never be without. I will never be without. And this would also proc Milkwood Bat's triggers. So my card draw, I will place that here. This is Shaman of the Pack. It is a 3 CMC Elf Shaman. It is a 3/2. It has an ability that says whenever Shaman of the Pack enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. So maybe I don't have 10 elves to activate Lathril, or I don't want to put my defenses down and I have a board and I just want to burn someone. I play Shaman of the Pack. Let's say I have 10 elves. Somebody is losing 10 life. Elderfang Venom. Elderfang Venom is a 4 CMC enchantment. It says attacking elves you control have Death Touch. Death Touch means whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, regardless of the amount of damage, that not an opponent, to an opponent's creature, or any creature for that matter, it would be enough damage to destroy that creature. Usually, you have to do enough damage to the creature's toughness. If a creature has 1 toughness, you do 1 damage, that creature dies. With this, regardless of the creature's toughness, if it has 2, 3, 4, 5 toughness, 1 damage is enough for that creature to die. So it makes it a lot easier for my elves to get in and do some damage, because not a lot of people would like to sacrifice their large creatures to 1/1s. Its second ability is whenever an elf you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So again, another payoff for people attempting to get rid of my board, or me sacrificing creatures. Alpha Authority. I'm going to have to make another pile and I'm dreading it already. Alpha Authority is a 2 CMC enchantment aura. It says enchanted creature has hexproof and can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. So hexproof is a keyword that says this creature cannot be targeted by your opponent's spells and abilities. And for this to say the enchanted creature can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, my commander has Menace. Menace says that this creature cannot be blocked unless by 2 or more creatures. So if I put Alpha Authority and equip it to Lathril, she is basically unblockable. So I'm going to put Alpha Authority right here. I don't know if this pile will be protection or evasion, but it's a pile. Next card, Izuri Renegade Leader. Izuri is a 3 CMC Elf Warrior, 2/2. You can pay 1 green mana, regenerate another target elf. Again, the same regenerate keyword I mentioned earlier. However, he has a trample effect, a run effect stapled to him. For 5 mana, elf creatures I control get +3/+3 and trample until the end of the turn. If I have more than 5 mana, I can do this multiple times. And a big part of this deck is making an unnecessary amount of mana. So he is low-key a win con, but he is also protection. I'm going to put him in the protection area because the win con ability only really happens coming down to the end of a game, like past turn 5 and stuff. This creature is Bane of Progress. It is a 6 CMC creature. It is a 2/2 elemental, another honorary elf. Whenever Bane of Progress enters the battlefield, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Put a +1/+1 counter on Bane of Progress for each permanent destroyed this way. So 6 mana is a very large amount of mana for a 2/2 creature, but not all commander decks run green. And if you aren't running green, then the only way for you to accelerate your mana are with artifacts and enchantments. So this is basically a board wipe for artifacts and enchantments. I've gotten some pretty crazy states with this, so I'll put him here with the rest of the interaction. Next card, Gnarlroot Trapper. Gnarlroot Trapper is a 1/1 for 1 black creature elf druid. I can pay 1 life, tap it to add 1 green mana to my pool, and only spend it to cast an elf creature spell. So it's a mana dork, it's mana acceleration. But the second half of it is target attacking elf you control gains Death Touch. Again, there's that key with Death Touch. Makes people not want to block. Another swamp. Another forest. Another forest. Coat of Arms. Coat of Arms is another one of my win cons that I may take out of this deck and replace with something else, because a lot of people run tribal decks, so this tends to come back and bite me in the butt. Coat of Arms is a 5 mana artifact that says each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. So in the elf deck, of course, they will all pump each other. However, if you notice, it says each creature, not each one of my creatures. So, therefore, if somebody else is playing a tribal deck, yeah, I may take it out, I may not. It's won me a few games. Win con. This is Leaf Crown Visionary. It is a 2 CMC 1/1. It says other elves you control get +1/+1, so it's an elf lord. And whenever you cast an elf spell, you may pay 1 green. If you do, draw a card. Pretty low to the ground, pretty cheap card draw. This is totally a proxy. Nobody in my area has one of these, so I'm gonna have to order one. So this is card draw. Do I have a rule for card draw? Right here. Swamp. Wirewood Channeler. Wirewood Channeler is a 4 CMC elf creature druid that can tap to add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of elves on the battlefield. Pretty self-explanatory, and it's another one of those creatures that go pretty well with my Staff of Domination, depending on how much elves I have. Mana acceleration it is. Realm Walker. Realm Walker is an honorary elf. It's a shapeshifter changeling, so it's an elf. It's a 3 CMC 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, and I may look at the top card of my library anytime, and I can cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of my library. Pretty solid card draw in a creature deck. Or at least card advantage. Dig Up. I do not have many tutors in this deck. I think this is the only instant and sorcery tutor I have in this deck. And with my luck, I'm usually just using it to get a land. So Dig Up is useful. It's a 1 CMC sorcery. I can use it to search my library for a basic land card, reveal it and put it into my hand, then shuffle. Or I can pay its Cleave Course, which is 4 mana, 1 of any, 2 black and a green, to then search my library for any card, and I don't have to reveal it and put it into my hand and then shuffle. It's the only tutor in the deck that isn't strapped to a creature. I'm gonna put it here at card advantage. This is Nadir's Nightblade. It is a 2 CMC elf warrior creature. It is a 1/3. It is a 3 CMC. I'm sure I said 2 just now. I'm not sure. ADHD. Whenever a token I control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and I gain 1 life. Again, Lathril creates creature tokens. My commander creates creature tokens. Whether they die, whether I sacrifice them, somebody's gonna feel it. Golgari Rot Farm. It is a land. When it enters the battlefield tapped, and I have to return a land from the battlefield to my hand, but it taps for 2. So color fixing, slight mana acceleration, if that makes sense. Stoneforge Masterwork. Stoneforge Masterwork is a 1 CMC artifact equipment. An equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control that shares a creature type with it. So it's like Coat of Arms, but just for one creature. It's a pretty good artifact. My commander can get pretty bonkers with it, because if he's a 2/3, 2/4, 2/3, there's another elf on the battlefield. She's a 3/4. I hit somebody, I make 3 elves. Now she's a 6/7. I hit somebody, she makes 6 elves. No, she's 12, 13. Math is not my forte. I think I butchered that. Please correct me if I did. But yeah, Stoneforge Masterwork. I don't know where to put it. I don't know where to put it. So I'm going to just put it with the Coat of Arms, considering how crazy it can get. It can be a win con. Champion of Lamholt, another honorary elf. Champion of Lamholt is a 3 CMC creature human warrior. It says creatures with power less than Champion of Lamholt's power can't block creatures I control. And it's a 1/1, but wait, there's more. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of Lamholt. So my commander makes tokens. I play a lot of low to the ground creatures. Champion of Lamholt can get pretty big pretty quickly, and then nobody can block me. I think I will make a pile and call that pile Evasion. So Champion of Lamholt is Evasion. What else could be Evasion? None of these. None of these. These are not Evasion. These are not Evasion. This is Evasion. This could be Evasion. So I'm gonna put this in the Evasion pile. Not Evasion. Not Evasion. So now this is the Evasion pile. Putrefy. Putrefy is a 3 CMC instant. Destroy target artifact or creature. It cannot be regenerated. Pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes you need some removal, more than just creatures. And then we have the second Planeswalker in this deck, another Taifa card. It's a 4 CMC Planeswalker. Its static ability is Elves I control can tap for black mana, which is pretty crazy, considering the amount of elves I can make with this deck. The +1 is you can put a +1/+1 counter on one target creature, elf creature, untap it, it gains Death Touch. Again, that with Death Touch, but also the ability to untap an elf. Good example of this being used would be I can attack with my commander, then I can put a counter on it and untap it. So if it is I have 10 or more elves, I can use her ability immediately. Taifa's 0 ability is to create an elf warrior token, and his -6 is you get an emblem whenever you cast an elf spell. It gains haste until end of turn, and you draw 2 cards, which is crazy. I've only had that go off once. They tend to take out Taifa pretty often. Emerald Charm is a pretty old card. 1 CMC instant. It says choose one, untap target permanent, which again, synergy, or destroy target global enchantment or target creature loses flying until end of turn. Most of the time, I'm using the second ability, which is destroy target global enchantment. That just means an enchantment that isn't an aura. Untap target permanent. I can untap my commander, burn people. Interaction. Swiftfoot Boots. Swiftfoot Boots is a 2 CMC artifact. Equipment. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Haste means it can attack the same turn it comes down. Hexproof, I explained hexproof already. Can't be targeted by your opponent's spells and abilities. It's not evasion. Should I just... See, this is the one thing I never know how to like categorize these things. So I'ma just put you here. Nah, let's put you with the boots. I'ma put it here. And let's try to get everything back into frame. Take this out of frame. You know what? I was wrong. There's already a protection pile. So, protection. Granted, quite a few things here double as protection, but you know, designated protection pile. I am so messy, I'm sorry. Deadly Relic. Got this in my first Commander Precon. Pretty good card. It is a 4 CMC instant. If you control your commander, you may cast this spell without paying its mana cost. Exile target creature. So, a lot of the time she's protected and I can exile something for free. Final card. Canopy Tactician. It is a 4 CMC elf. It's an elf lord. It gives other elves I control +1/+1, and I could also tap it to add 3 mana, which isn't a bad return. Now we have the second half of the deck. Oh damn, it's already been over a half hour. Didn't expect this to take this long. I really hope you all are enjoying it though. Any feedback will be more than welcome. Because I have no idea what I'm doing. But isn't that how everybody starts? A swamp. Elves of Deep Shadow is a 1/1 elf. I can tap it to add 1 black mana, and it deals 1 damage to me. Mana acceleration. Wrap in Vigor. Wrap in Vigor, 2 CMC instant. Regenerate each creature you control. It's protection. I'll get a heroic intervention one of these days. Sylvan Anthem. Green creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever a green creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. Almost all of the creatures in my deck are green, like they are predominantly green, and the creature tokens that my commander makes are green elf tokens. So every time she makes a token, I get to scry 1, which is pretty useful, trying to run through the deck to find stuff. I won't say this is card advantage. It's just a lord. It pumps. I don't know. Synergy. Drop it in synergy. Anything that I don't know is going in synergy. Beast Whisperer. A 4 CMC 2/3 elf creature druid. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. This deck is predominantly creatures. In with the card advantage. Herald's Horn. It's a 3 CMC artifact. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creature spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. Also, at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card of the chosen type, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. So not only is this mana acceleration, but it also is card advantage. Pretty damn good card. in tribal decks. Part of Ancestry enters the battlefield tapped, but can tap for either color of my commander's command identity. And when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type, surprise, elf deck, I can scry one. Haunting Voyage is a 6 CMC sorcery. Very large CMC sorcery, but I did mention that I have efficient card graveyard recursion in the deck. This is one of them. So choose a creature type. Return up to 2 creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type. And you can foretell it for 2 and cast it for 7. So usually this goes down early game and everybody forgets about it. My board is destroyed a couple times. I'm like, oh, it's about that time. Haunting Voyage. And I get back all the elves from my graveyard onto the battlefield. I'll put the graveyard recursion stuff with the card advantage, because it's technically card advantage. Elvish Mystic, a 1/1 for 1 that taps 1 green. You've seen it about 3 times already. Well, cards like it. Arbor Elf, a 1/1 for 1 that untaps target forest. Again, mana acceleration. Wirewood Symbiote. Wirewood Symbiote doubles as protection as well as mana acceleration, so synergy. I can return an elf I control to its owner's hand, untap target creature. Activate this ability only once each turn. Again, it does not matter if it's on other people's turn, it's still once each turn. So I can do it on my turn, I can do it on somebody else's turn. In response to somebody attempting to kill my commander, for example, I can return it to my hand as cost and then untap any creature. It can even be an invalid target. I can yeah. So it works. I can use that attempt to untap this, even if it's tapped. Synergy. Wolverine Riders, another one of the token makers in the deck. It's a 6 CMC elf. At the beginning of each upkeep, not just mine, each upkeep, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness, which is pretty damn good because a lot of creatures in this deck increase, a lot of creatures and things in this deck increase the power and toughness of my elves. So let's say it creates a 1/1 green elf creature token, but at that point in time I have 3 or 4 creatures on the board that pump elves by +1/+1. So that elf will then enter the battlefield with 4 toughness. If it's 3 lords, if it's 4 lords, it'll enter the battlefield with 5 toughness. And then because it entered the battlefield with 5 toughness, I'll gain 5 life instead of 1. This card has 1 make games. This card it goes crazy. I should have a pile for token generation. I really should. Token generation goes in the middle. Scamfast Shadow Sage. When it's a 4 CMC 2/5 elf cleric. When it enters the battlefield, I can choose 1. Each opponent loses X life, where X is the greatest number of creatures I control. It's going to be elves. Or I gain X life, where X is the greatest number of creatures I control that have a shared type. It's going to be elves. This is similar to another elf that I showed you earlier, but it can go both ways. I'm going to put it here with the burn. Swamp. Eaten Alive. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or pay 4 mana. It's a 1 CMC sorcery. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Again, some pretty versatile removal that works well with the fact that I make a lot of tokens. Scamfar Avenger. Whenever another non-token elf or berserker you control dies, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Card draw. And again, it pays me off for people attempting to wipe my board. Infernal Grasp. Destroy target creature. You lose 2 life. It is a 2 CMC instant. Solid removal. Reclamation Sage is a 3 CMC elf. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Solid removal, especially in an elf deck. And as you see, I have ways that I can return elves to my hand. So there have been instances where I get to use that ETB effect multiple times. End Raise Forerunners. The Poor Man's Crater Hoof Behemoth is a 8 mana boar creature token. That is a 7/7 with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. Vigilance means when it attacks, it doesn't tap. Trample means if there is any residual, like leftover damage that goes over a creature's toughness. So for example, if a creature with 1 toughness blocks, its opponent still takes 6 damage. When it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2, Vigilance and Trample until the end of the turn. Pretty solid card. Elvish Archdruid. It's a elf lord, so each other elf I control gets +1/+1, and I can also tap it for 1 green for each elf I control. Elvish Archdruid is a 3 CMC elf. Mana Acceleration. Llanowar Wastes. Can tap it for colorless, or tap it for black or green, and lose 1 life. It's commander. We start with 40. 1 life is not much. Bajuka Bog is a land. It enters the battlefield tapped, and when it does, I get to exile all cards in target player's graveyard. Graveyard hit tapped onto a land is always a plus. Quest for Renewal. Enchanted. Quest for Renewal is a 2 CMC enchantment, and it says as long as there are 4 or more quest counters on Quest for Renewal, untap all creatures you control during each player's untap step. Whenever a creature you control becomes tapped, you may put a quest counter on Quest for Renewal. So if I have, for example, the requirement for my commander, which is 10 elves plus Lathril, and I tap them while this is on the board, it will immediately get enough counters to then untap all my creatures on everybody else's untap step. So then I can use her ability on everybody's turn. Synergy. There's another card that does this called Seedborn Muse. I do not have Seedborn Muse in this deck. This is lower CMC, it's easy to activate, and it's harder to remove because it's not a creature. Temple of Milady, land that enters the battlefield and lets me scry. Can tap any of my colors. Forest. Guardian Project. 4 CMC enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control, which is, we're playing Commander. As long as you're not playing one of those decks that can play multiple of a specific type of card, everything's going to be 1 because it's a singleton format. So, solid card, drawing a creature deck. In Garruk's Wake, 9 CMC, but again, this deck makes a lot of mana. It's a sorcery. Destroy all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. One-sided board wipe. Forest. Poison Tip Archer. It is a 4 CMC elf. It's a 2/3 with reach and death touch. Reach means it can block creatures with flying because it has a bow. Whenever another creature dies, any creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. So this is a part of the burn plan. Forest. Swamp. Fyndhorn Elves. 1 mana, 1/1 that taps for 1. You've seen it about 4 times already. Swamp. Leyline of Abundance. If Leyline of Abundance, Leyline of Abundance is a 4 CMC enchantment. When, if it is, If it is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. And whenever you tap a creature for mana, add an additional green. I have lots of those in this deck. And For 8 mana, I can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature I control. I usually get to do that. That's if this card is there. It technically is mana acceleration. There's also Loki a win con. I will put it with synergy. Elvish Harbinger. Whenever Elvish Harbinger enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an elf card, reveal it, then shuffle your library and put it at the top of your library. It can also tap for 1 mana of any color. It is a 3 CMC creature. 3 CMC for a tutor that can eventually tap for mana. Not bad. I'm gonna put it with the card advantage. Tusky, Bearer of Secrets. This spell can't be countered. It is a 4/4 1/1 legendary creature squirrel. This is another honorary elf because it fits so well in this deck. This spell cannot be countered. It is indestructible. And Tusky, Bearer of Secrets attacks each turn if able. That's okay, it's indestructible. The source is whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. That's a lot of card draw. Imperious Perfect is a 3 CMC elf. It's a 2/2. Each other elf creature I control gets +1/+1. And I can pay 1 green and tap it to create an elf token. So it's a Lord plus there's token generation. Lil Sana Huntsmaster is a 4 CMC 3/3 elf warrior. Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So token creation. Lifecrafter's Bestiary is a 3 CMC artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay 1 green. If you do, draw a card. Decent card draw. Rogue's Passage is a land. It taps for colorless, or I can pay 4 mana and target creature can't be blocked this turn. Soul Ring. Everybody knows Soul Ring. It's a 1 CMC artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp is a 1 CMC artifact. Whenever an equipped creature gets +1/-1. Just so happens quite a few of my creatures are 1/1s. Whenever a equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards and equip for 1. So that's basically 1 mana, draw 2 cards. 1 mana, draw 2 cards. Vampiric Rites is a 1 CMC enchantment. Can pay 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, you gain a life and draw a card. Card draw. Swamp. Forest. Command Tower. Can tap for any mana of the color identity of my commander. Fierce Empath. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 6 or greater, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. I have 3 targets for this in this deck, which are the Endrace Forerunners, the Wolverine Riders, and the Bane of Progress. I may add more later on, but those have been very instrumental in my wins at times. It's also a 1/1 and it's 3 mana. Overgrown Tomb, a land. I can make it onto the battlefield untapped. It taps for both colors. Forest. Cultist of the Absolute is a black legendary enchantment background. It says commander creatures you own get +3/+3, flying, death touch, and water pay 3 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature, which in a deck like this that makes a lot of creature tokens isn't too bad. Swamp. That's hilarious. I wonder if the last card's gonna be a swamp as well. Hey, I was right. Swamp. And yeah, that's it. This is my Lathril commander deck. I have a few cards in mind to upgrade it. I just have not gotten around to that because, you know, finances, but also ADHD. But I will get to that eventually. I think she's pretty strong as she is, and I don't want to necessarily make her too much stronger. A lot of the people in the card shop that I tend to play at do not play very optimized decks. I'm not saying my deck is super optimized, but she puts in work. I'm going to eventually shuffle it. You know what? Let's end this with a pile shuffle. So this has been my Lathril Blade of the Elves commander deck. If you all have any suggestions that I should add to the deck, please let me know. I'm always willing and open-minded to suggestions. I love learning new things. I love learning about new cards that I did not previously know existed. You know, if you enjoyed this, if it was relaxing, let me know. I want to continue making videos like this. I have a couple other ideas in mind though. It may not all be Magic the Gathering, so we shall see. And now I am just gonna shut up, and I guess you can listen to the card sounds. Oh no. I hope you can't hear my stomach because it's starting to make noise. I think that's my cue to call it quits. Good night.